Welcome back to Daily Stand-Up. So I want to go through some detail of this ticket that I brought up last time about switching from mass transit over to another library. In this case, it was EasyNetQ. And I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this ticket because I'm not going to switch. I ended up not liking EasyNetQ as a package. I'm going to stick with mass transit. And go from there. The reason for that is I discovered that EasyNetQ relies specifically on a specific message property within RabbitMQ's, that it attaches to Rabbit's message frame, which is highly problematic. So they tack on a type property, then they use the namespace as well as the namespace plus the name. I think of the type, but regardless, it's basically they attach something like this type, and then it would be like, you know, two-stroke engines dot engine, specifically for our engine project, but it needs that in order to deserialize the message. So if I use mass transit, it can't, there's no interpretability between mass transit and EasyNetQ because mass transit doesn't let you set custom message properties, at least not the type, at least not this one. And honestly, it's kind of problematic that EasyNetQ does that because they're essentially defining their own protocol at that point, because RabbitMQ, or really the AMQ protocol, does not necessitate that type property to be specified in that protocol. So by EasyNetQ requiring that, it's basically creating a new thing. So mass transit does not need that because AMQ doesn't require that. And mass transit allows you to use raw JSON serialization and deserialization, and basically just send up a raw JSON object. EasyNetQ lets you do that, but it relies on this type property, and I didn't know that. So because of that, I'm going to actually stick with mass transit, try to learn it better, and then go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So if you've ever used EasyNetQ as a package, let me know what you think about what they do with the type property, and if you've ever found out a way to get around that. I have not. How do you delete a card? I see there's archive, but is there a... What in the world? Is there a delete? I guess we're just gonna archive it. I don't know where the archive sends it to. I don't know. Alright, I'm gonna add a new card because I have something else I need to work on. And this is gonna be adding OpenTelemetry in our project. I feel like doing this style video was like exactly what we did last year, how we got this channel really going. So this is really a throwback to how this project got started. If you don't know what OpenTelemetry is, it basically allows you to expose the metrics endpoint on your .NET project to give you tracing in various things. I've actually not used it at all, really, so I want to learn how to use it. So we're going to do our classic what, why, and done when, that classic strategy. So what is going to be add OpenTelemetry in our, just add OpenTelemetry, add metrics plus tracing. So metrics will be like your hosting environment, your the runtime, any requests over HTTP, tracing is going to add distributed tracing, so it's going to give you that trace ID that you can associate logs with. All that stuff is I just haven't set up yet. I really haven't been focusing on logs too much in this project, just because I was focusing on other stuff. So that's going to be the what. The why is we need to have logging set up and visible in a dashboard. I'll get to the dashboard part in a second. Done when we have wired up OpenTelemetry and we can navigate to the dash metrics endpoint. The dash metrics endpoint is basically what it sets up. You don't have to use OpenTelemetry to expose that endpoint. There you can just, I think there's a built-in one, I think, for that metrics endpoint, but we're going to use OpenTelemetry because that seems to be where things are moving towards, especially in cloud environments. It's problematic because I feel like years ago, when I say years ago, just like a couple years ago, I feel like there were so many logging tools that were made, but they were super specific to whatever deployment service you were using. And so it required so much security, proprietary packages to be included in your projects to allow your application, when it deployed, to do really specific things in a specific hosting environment. But if you ever switched out of that, your logs and tracing kind of, or I shouldn't say though, your visibility in terms into your health check of your app and things like that, it may have been basically deleted. OpenTelemetry, at least, and some other open source things we're seeing now, at least give you a free alternative to adding pretty good logging and tracing in your application. So, and I'm going to add actually another point to here on the bottom as like a nice to have that I'm trying to figure out how in the world to set up. I'm getting stuck, and I'll go into that in a second. But basically, I want to add Grafana. Oops, Grafana, which is basically an open source free dashboard that you can use to send logs to, and then it does all the dashboard type things. It can give you graphs and all that. And then there's there's a thing called Prometheus, which is like a data aggregator. So it'll basically probe or scrape that metrics endpoint that's exposed when I'm adding OpenTelemetry, and it'll basically get all that data. How I understand it to be is Prometheus is like it scrapes that endpoint, aggregates all that data, and then I'm trying to like, is that it? Because I know Grafana can then connect to Prometheus, but this stuff is pretty new to me. I've never used Grafana or Prometheus, so I know these are like the two kind of go together, and they're getting a little more popular. I've used Datadog in the past, and some other tools, but I've never used these two together. So I'm trying to learn how these work, and I'm going to go into the code in a second. So I'm going to save that. Oh, I didn't estimate. Hold on. I am going to point these at. This is at least going to be a 5. To be honest, it might be more, but I'm going to put it at a 5. So we'll put that in there. That's in to do, or that's in progress. So I'm going to go and open the code here. So that was my Trello board. I'm actually going to go right into the app and I'll show you what the metrics are. So this is just, it's not readable at all. This is, you're never going to want to go through and try to make any sense of this. But basically, I hit an endpoint, and it just gives you a lot of detail as to what's happening. I haven't added all the instrumentation stuff to make this actually like worthwhile, but that's kind of, you can kind of get the gist of what's happening. So how I understand is Prometheus is going to probe this endpoint and then get this stuff, and then Grafana is going to display it in basically a chart or a dashboard. So where I'm at with this here currently is my project is all running in Docker. So in my program CS file, I'm working on now adding the OpenTelemetry middleware. These are some metrics and tracing I have set up so far. I'd like to expand on this and really understand what all I can do. And this one here I'm still confused about. So if anyone is familiar with using this add Prometheus exporter, I guess my question is, what does this do? I'm getting stuck on trying to find legitimate tutorials on Prometheus and Grafana. It seems like a lot of them are heavily tied to either running in a specific Docker configuration or using .NET Aspire. I just want it to be as basic as possible. And for me, I'm getting stuck on, so I understand that Prometheus uses a configuration file. But what I'm not understanding is when I go to my Docker Compose YAML, and I've specified Prometheus, the image, give it a container name, its port, but where I'm getting lost is, so I have all that running. If I go to let's see, if I go here to localhost 9090, you can see that it takes me to my Prometheus agent, which is good. So it's running on its container. And if I go to status and targets, you can see that it's finding that endpoint, but when I go to navigate it, it's not discovering what where that host is running, and where that should be is my engines project. So if I go to, I don't know what port this is running on. Let's see. Does it tell me? I'm just gonna restart this. Okay, so this is my project that you've seen a number of times on the channel. So it's running on 61272 port, but since my Prometheus image is not in the same network, I have to specify the internal network inside of Docker, and I'm specifying the port. And I would think that would work, but it's not picking it up. It's not getting the any kind of logs, at least not that I can see. So I'm just kind of confused about how this is functioning. I still have to do a lot of research, but this is like my first day of using any of this stuff, so I feel like I'm just kind of getting stuck just in general configuration. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. It's a little confusing. I'm trying to, yeah, I don't know. I've seen a lot of mixed things with setting it up in Docker and Docker Compose. But I'm very confused about what this is doing. So if anyone knows what add Prometheus exporter that middleware does, let me know, because I'm very confused about that. And I could be missing some configuration too on this. I'm not quite sure. And then you also have to add this one, map Prometheus scraping endpoint. It says adds OpenTelemetry Prometheus scraping endpoint middleware. a convention routes to, but I'm not sure like what that actually does, and I'm getting stuck here because I'm looking at tutorials, and it's just they're just telling me to put that in there, but they're not explaining what that's doing, and I'm struggling to find documentation that's telling me what's actually happening. So I'm confused about that. So if anyone has ever in .NET with Prometheus like has any experience, let me know. Um, really weird. I feel like this should be way easier. Like I'm just adding logging. Like this is super weird. Like I don't know. It shouldn't. I feel like it shouldn't be this weird. Because like in my mass transit configuration to connect to RabbitMQ, I'm using um, the host here with my same internal. I almost wonder. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. Huh. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. So again, I have Prometheus running. I have it running inside of Docker, and then Docker Compose, and I have it wired up like you saw in the middleware, but it's not going. So I have to figure out. I have to do some more configuration. I feel like, um, but honestly, that is it. I think that's kind of where I'm at on this project. I can do an overview of like what the state of this is at, but I kind of just wanted to make a stand up kind of like how we were doing this last year, just to get back real technical and real, just kind of looking at the code and trying to troubleshoot and problem solve. Um, there's a lot, honestly. There's a lot to this project, so there's a lot of things that we can still explore. Um, but I think that's it for now. So I'll see you in the next one.